And hey, what about that crazy Star Wars bar? Can you believe all the creatures in there?
Welcome to Panelism, the podcast where we talk about the comics and graphic novels worth having on your shelf and more. I'm Taylor Trask.
I'm Todd A.
And Todd, it is the holiday season,
which means
upon us, which means Star Wars. You're talking Star Wars. I don't know the rest of the words. You were singing it earlier, much better than I. That predated me just slightly, and so I never really.
You know, my familiarity with all of that old SNL is from their 25th anniversary special, which I videotaped as a child, and then watched repeatedly. So.
Well, happy Star Wars season to you, and this is probably the last one for a while. Hopefully, we'll.
I know. I wonder what this means, because the Rian Johnson ones have gotten canceled, I believe.
The Game of Thrones ones have gotten canceled.
What? Oh, yeah.
Pennywise is doing one. Yeah.
And everyone seems to be loving The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, so maybe that's where we're going.
You know, let's just.
And I have not watched
out of the way.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way. And I have not watched it either. I've seen little pieces here and there. I was going to save myself for when January, February rolls around. There's nothing else to watch. Although who knows? At this point, I've said now a few times. If they stopped making anything new, comics, movies, graphic novels, book, anything, like it just stopped today forever, I still wouldn't finish all the stuff I want to finish by the time I die, assuming I live to be 90. It wouldn't happen. I don't know. It's a problem.
And the related frustration I feel is that there's so much historical stuff that I want to read to just be a good human, citizen of literature or whatever you want to call it. And I just, it's like I want to read all the myths and, all the histories but I also got to keep up with what's new.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that. And I was going to add on, we had like a couple years ago talked about, okay, if we just did a show a week on a comic book, we had enough on our shelves to cover the next year. Mm-hmm. And then you think every year we probably add a year to that.
Yep.
There's no way.
I'm sort of thankful. Drawn and Quarterly often does a big holiday sale, and it looks like this year they did not. And I'm sort of thankful for that because, they put out like 15 to 20 books in 2019 alone. I don't understand how. If you just collected your favorite Drawn and Quarterly books, I'd have no room for anything else. And that's just them. So it's 20 is going to be an interesting time. And I think, this all comes back to just the idea of curation. I hope to some of you listening that we provide, somewhat of a public service to help you sift through it all, because this idea of curation is more needed now than I think it's ever been. And I'm not saying that we're the solution, but it's like, Christ, how do you get through it all? And here's a better question. How do you get through it all and not just numb yourself to just like kind of this dutiful, like, I'll read this and I'll read this and I'll read this. And just like, it's at some point you're just sort of going through the motions just to get it all through your head and not sort of enjoying the ride. And that's equally a problem.
And especially if you're trying to write any kind of story of your own, or, no matter what sort of creative outlet you have, you can't spend all your time consuming.
No.
And the way it probably works for most people, I would assume, is sort of how it works for me. And when I consume some stuff, that gives me more creative ideas. And then, and then I want to create more and at least work through some of those ideas on my own. And it's just, it's a lot. So we're now at Star Wars official in canon Skywalker movies, number 9. Yep. Although I think Rogue One and Solo count as canon.
Yeah, of course they count as canon.
I guess they're just not part of the, how do we justify that? Who cares? So there's 11 movies.
Yeah.
And 8 of them are definitely worth watching.
8. Yeah, actually. Ooh, let me think through this. 8. Are you? So which ones are you ignoring? Solo, I'm guessing. Oh,
no. I love Solo.
You did.
I did love Solo. Did you see it?
I did.
I think it's so fun.
It was fine. In hindsight now, I'm like, man, that should have been a TV show too. Although the problem with Solo was that they.
Well, I like that it was over.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like the cast. I don't necessarily like whoever the actor is playing Han Solo.
It's weird to have a prequel when I'm like, basically the age he is in Solo is like, what, 2 months before he meets Luke at the cantina? I'm like, do we need to know this?
Right.
Like, is this really necessary?
And it makes Lando look super young.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like Lando, he'll grow up to be Billy D. Williams. You're basically Harrison Ford now. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it was fine. I feel like what Jon Favreau is doing on The Mandalorian, even though I haven't watched it all, from everything I've heard and everybody, all the reaction from both fans and sort of the public at large, the people who aren't huge Star Wars fans or maybe sort of like, nerd adjacent, and they've seen it. The reaction has pretty much been, oh my God, this is sort of what we've been waiting for since Rogue One. Because of all of them, I think Rogue One nails it more than, oh my God, that movie, perfect start to finish. Like you couldn't have gotten. Yeah. Couldn't have gotten better. Part of the reason I don't like Solo is because it rips off some moments from Rogue One that worked really well. I'm like, we don't need that again. We had that. What we want is Baby Yoda. So it feels like, man, and I'll just say this is my opening gambit. We're gonna talk about the Rise of Skywalker and spoil the hell out of it. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe pause, come back. Because
there's no getting around.
Oh God, no.
This is not a review without spoilers.
Oh hell no! But I think my opening shot here is that it seems like now that it's all done, seems like they should have just given the new trilogy to Jon Favreau and just said, here, just take it all, just go, because he clearly has a really great talent for taking and reinterpreting a property and kind of setting the stage for others to work on it too, obviously with Iron Man, but he's done it with other stuff, other movies as we've gone. And I'm just like, man, the stuff he's doing in The Mandalorian is great. Why did we have to watch, 6 years, 5 years? When did Force Awakens come out? 14 or 15? I should know this already. This is stupid.
I think that's a good question.
I'm going to say 15. Here it comes.
I think it's 15.
And 15. Yes. So like 4 years, 3 movies, like all this, what we really saw was Disney spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to basically watch 2 guys re-piss on the same fire hydrant. Like that's what we saw, because we had 3 movies without any sort of like showrunner, or like Kathleen Kennedy was clearly absent from the creative process. Like it boggles the mind. They would put this much, like this is their like marquee, other than Marvel, this is like their marquee property. And yet there was nobody there to go, what story are we telling over 3 movies? Like what's the outline? There was no outline. It's just like, hey, JG, what are you going to do? I'll do this. Hey, Ryan, what do you want to do? None of that. I want to do this. Hey, JG, you're back. What do you want to do? Actually, none of that. And instead, I'm going to go back to the thing that I wanted to do, and we'll do it breathlessly.
I can tell now we have stuff to get into. But I wanted to start with, like, how did you see it? Like in our classic question, like, what day? Because we're talking on opening weekend to get this episode out as quickly as possible. So give me the deets.
I went to our sort of, I forget what it's not a Carmike. It's like Regal. We have like this kind of megaplex near where I live. So I went there and I actually saw it is it XD? I always forget. Is that I'm thinking of that Disney XD. Oh, it's the big, like the big 4X, sort of, X, no, not 4. XD. Yeah, it's at Cinemark XD. So yeah, saw it in the XD theater, which is basically a bigger sort of Omni-like screen, although it's not an Omni. It's not like a it sort of has the illusion of it being a little bit bigger and wrapping around you, but more on the sound is supposed to be more intense, which if you remember, I saw Blade Runner 2049 in that format, and holy crap, that was intense. It almost seems like the mix wasn't meant for that theater, so I didn't quite feel like it was any different than going to the Alamo or something. But big huge crowd, Friday afternoon, 3:30. That was mainly after you said you had seen it, I was going to wait until maybe after Christmas. I was like, oh shoot, I better get in there. So it was kind of nice going to a movie with an opening day crowd, totally sold out. That has been a long time since I've done that.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of fun. I like the energy. I've mentioned before on previous episodes. I really like the energy of an opening night or opening day crowd. So it was fun to get back to that.
Yeah, everything I heard was, of course, it's like the Avengers movies now, and every Star Wars for the past 4 years. Like they're just every single showing is packed for the first weekend at least. And yeah, so I had friends go to an 8 a.m. on Friday, and it was
Jesus.
Packed. Yeah, like even when you said 3:30, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like. I don't know why it even occurred to me that like it would somehow not be packed. Like, of course it's gonna be packed. I went at 6 p.m. on Thursday, the first showing in my local theater, and saw it in Dolby Atmos. And packed theater, like that vibe of like, people clapping as soon as the opening crawl comes up. That was great fun.
My crowd was strangely subdued. I think everybody was just trying to tell. Yeah, nobody shouted out, or I didn't hear any sort of additional anything. It was very odd. I was sort of expecting, well, surely there will be like that original cheer, but it may just be everybody was just kind of there, burnt out from a long, autumn, and just ready to hang out and just chill. That's my guess. Anyway, So we saw it about around the same time. Did you have any expectations for this? We talked to death of Last Jedi. So if you want to hear that was what, 2 years ago, year ago, 2 years ago?
Is that? Yeah, we did talk about that a lot. Okay. So what was it man, now I'm trying to remember. There's one where you did an episode with Emily Kelly Cunin that I was not able to attend.
Did we?
Was that Rogue One or Force Awakens?
That was, I think
remembering now.
I think it was Rogue One.
It may have been. Wow. You got to dig into the Panelism / Todd and Taylor archives, because we've now covered Star Wars a lot, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah, but
it's a Christmas tradition.
Did you? Yeah, it is. Did you have any expectations though? Did you come into it going like, because we didn't hate Last Jedi. I think
I loved Last Jedi.
Different take of it. Yeah, so it wasn't like we're like, oh, screw that. It just at the same time. Did you? With one movie left, were you sort of there going, well, they have to do this and this and that? Did you know what you wanted?
No, I didn't know what I wanted. I did have pretty high expectations. I did want some sort of like resolution thing, and I didn't want it to be like too cutesy. I didn't want Kylo to be redeemed, like really at all. But now having seen it, I would say at least not fully redeemed. So we can talk about what we got afterwards. I was, if anything, I was wary of J.J. Abrams coming back in, because I hated that idea that like he has to come fix something. And I don't remember the sequence of events of when he was announced as being this director, but I really liked The Last Jedi. I liked how it sort of expanded the universe a little bit. That's, I was hoping for something that connected to that, didn't try to retcon Last Jedi, and, gave us some sort of conclusion, whatever that might be. What about yourself? You didn't hate Last Jedi.
No.
But it was not favorite.
I just did not like the fact that, movie one set up all this stuff. Last Jedi ignored or just sort of threw a lot of it in the bin. Like, nah, that's not really relevant. Here's stuff that I want to talk about, which, if Rian Johnson had done all three, that might have been interesting. Or if J.J. Abrams had done all three, or at least, wrote the scripts for all three and have somebody else direct them. But it just, that dissonance was weird. And then to see it flipped again when he came back. And remember, originally, Colin Trevorrow was supposed to be the director for this one. And he was fired too. He had written a pass at the script, which he's listed as a co-writer on this one.
Now, didn't he do Rogue One? Okay, never mind.
You'd ask me that.
Keep talking. I know. I'm looking it up.
I need to look it up too, because this will. He did Jurassic World.
No, it was Gareth Edwards that did.
Gareth Edwards. Thank you. He's basically just known for Jurassic World, and then.
That's right. That's sorry. I mixed that up entirely. Yep.
That's right. Colin Trevorrow, and strangely, just think about, I think he's he's the third director to have gotten fired, because if you remember, Miller and Lord were supposed to do Solo. They got fired halfway through, famously, and Ron Howard rewrote and reshot that. What's the kid who did the Fantastic Four terrible movie? Oh, what the hell? It's like that guy. Oh man, Josh Stank or something like. Oh man, it's gonna Trank. There we go. Josh. Sorry, Josh.
No, we're forever going with Stank.
Josh Stank. Yeah, no, that's the Fantastic Four Stank. Coming up. No, he was fired. I forget which one he was going to do. So he was fired. So they've just not had great luck at continuity. And so to see JJ come back in and instead of like playing with what Ryan had left him, he did the same thing Ryan did, which is just kind of like go, yeah, we're just going to ignore all that. I mean, so much that was sort of important. Yeah. Oh my God. So much that was important in The Last Jedi just got glazed completely over, including that ending. It's like, yeah, look at other people in the universe might have might be force sensitive too. And that's cool. And that will lead somewhere. And JJ's like, no, it won't. And like, and by the way, I'm bringing back the Knights of Ren and they're not going to matter at all. It's like, just cause. So I don't know. I went in completely expectation less because I knew with JJ coming back, it was probably going to be a little muddy. And then after seeing Watchmen kind of conclude the way it did, I was like, man, I don't think it's going to be fair to hold anything to that standard. So I'm just going to go in just completely, free of anything and just sort of enjoy it as it is. And I think under those circumstances, it was as good as it could have been. We could have expected, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, man, just so much of it didn't make any goddamn sense. Like just
really.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's funny that you went in with no expectations and came out with just sort of a less excited feeling. And I went in with pretty high expectations and came out pretty satisfied.
Interesting. I mean, there were some great moments. Don't get me wrong. There were some really great moments that I wish, and it almost made it like the ones that I would say maybe 30% of it. I was like, oh man, that's great. Usually anything involving Rey and Kylo Ren, like anytime they're together or anything involving them, I was on board with. But man, I'd seen some reviews allude to this, but I didn't realize how severe it was. That first 45 minutes, it's like seeing 10-year-old kids at a birthday party explain in rapid fire succession everything they ever wanted to see in a Star Wars movie, and they just made that. It was like, and we're going here, and we're going here. I'm just like constantly moving from scene to scene to the point where there was even one scene, I forget which one exactly, but what's his name? The actor Richard E. Grant.
Yeah.
God, perfect casting there. I mean, he was. I'm glad they snuck him before the end because he makes the perfect sort of Empire officer. He's just built for it. But there was
to such a degree that you think that he played Tarkin in.
Yes. Or at least he was there. He was cast.
You're like, wait, is he computer generated from the 80s?
Well, I actually had to pause myself. I'm like, man, was a younger Richard E. Grant like in the original movies, and they just as like a extra or something? We just didn't know. Might be fun. But there's a scene in the first 45 minutes where he's delivering dialogue, and it's almost like he has to spit it out as fast as he can because the scene's going to change again and just cut him off. He's like, and then it just literally cuts. And so this breathlessly, it felt like JJ was breathlessly trying to give us what Last Jedi would have been had he done it, and then just to like put it out there, and now here's my third movie, and so that was just jarring.
In fairness to your point, I felt that a little bit too. Like JJ was trying to explain a bunch of stuff quickly, and it was bouncing from like scene to scene to scene to scene, and it's so quickly. But after. So then there's a moment when they get to one of those moons of Endor or whatever, and where the crazy ocean is,
Yeah.
And when Rey goes out there, that was sort of the first really long scene with Rey.
Yeah.
And it was like then it all kind of settles, and you realize, and like that's where the story part of it really takes off. Mm-hmm. And so it was only kind of after viewing it all that I thought, you know what, that. Not necessarily rapid fire, but that like scene to scene cutting has always been a Star Wars trope to the extent that there is now something called the star wipe on, iMovie, which is like the fade in out that Lucas did so often in the original trilogy,
Yeah,
so,
he did, but the difference here is that, like, in those older movies, it would wipe and you'd see like an establishing shot of a planet and then would push in a little bit and it would take its time. And this one, it's like, no time. It's just like, planet, we're not going to show you the planet. Here, we're there now. And then now we're over here. It was so fast. And then on top of that, it just felt like, this may sound controversial, but like the inclusion of any of the Princess Leia scenes just felt so. I almost wish they had opened with like her funeral, like, and Princess Leia, General Organa died, and like she helped spark the light, but we'll carry on without her, just because it felt. All those scenes were from another movie, so it just kind of felt weird, kind of Phantom-like, that they're just trying to like insert them in, and you can kind of see some of the effects where they clearly cut her out of another background and like put her in. I was just like, I don't know, that was the best idea, but I couldn't even ponder that so much because it just kept going. Like before you even stopped to think about what you were watching, it's like on to the next one, and Lando's there too, and then now he's gone, and now we're on to the next one. I was just like, Christ Almighty, just slow down.
This is all interesting to hear because I remember the last time I watched Empire Strikes Back, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I did not remember that it like jumped around so much. So I guess the way I watched it was that this is the end of the trilogy here. And we all know that this is the last part of a to be continued kind of story. So there's no time to really, set the table has been set. So just start eating. But yeah, I did feel that like rapid fire thing. But then I felt, like I said, once it got to Endor or wherever they were, when she's off on the old Death Star, that was where I was like, in fully,
Yeah, that was a great scene. I love that sequence.
But to back up a little bit too, because it's funny, I had avoided spoilers to such an extent that I didn't even understand that Palpatine was in this, and I guess that was in a trailer and caused some controversy. No, because earlier in the day, I was having coffee with our friend of the pod, Boris, and he said something about Palpatine being in it, and I was like, Palpatine's in it, and he was instantly apologetic, like, oh my god, I can't believe you didn't see that. But I did love that, like, the crawl mentions Palpatine, and it was like we knew from the second it started, like, oh, there it is. And I'll just pause there and say, how did you probably knew Palpatine was going to be in it? How did you feel about his appearance in the movie?
I mean, yes, I knew he was going to be in it. I mean, it could have easily just been like, I sort of was thinking, oh, he'll be sort of like a side quest or something. He'll be like there'll be like a hologram of him that will be like haunting everything. But then to see in the first 5 minutes, they're just like, oh no, here he is. He is alive.
Right.
Don't worry about how, and don't worry about the fact that, with some sort of nameless force, he's built all of these superstar destroyers with no one to pilot them. Don't worry about any of that. Just enjoy this. And I don't know, it was in one way they had to show him and they had to say his name because half the audience does not know his name is Palpatine. They just know him as the Emperor. So they had to, really establish that. So when the reveal of Rey came down, it's like, oh, that's the name of the Emperor. Like they had to really, it's not like Skywalker where they're like, everybody just knows. They had to really nail that down. So then, just seeing him in the beginning, I felt like, I mean, why couldn't have just been Snoke, right? Like, why couldn't have just been, Snoke was just constantly cloned and he was alive. It could have been the same, like Sith temple. All of that could have still been exactly the same. It just felt weird that somehow inexplicably he's still alive, and you could say, well, they cloned him. I'm like, okay, but then who's they? Like, why don't we get more of like the team behind who brought Palpatine back and what their motives are? It's just that just was really glossed over. And then more annoyingly, it's like, oh, and we Frankenstein Snoke together. So my thought is immediately I'm going, okay, so you created in a vat a incredibly force powerful kind of being, and you can do it again anytime you want. Why do you need Rey? Why not just create any form that you want and just Palpatine's spirit can go into that? Like, it seemed weird that they built this guy and it just felt like JJ came in and went, nah, I'm not interested in that anymore. Let's just have Palpatine come back, which should have just been him from the beginning.
Built Snoke as the character.
Yeah, Snoke.
Yeah. I definitely didn't think at all that this was like a clone of Palpatine or any sort of construct, or I just thought this is him. Like, I just took it at face value of what they said. He'd been hiding out in this, weird Exegol ghost planet or whatever. Do you think this was Abrams' original vision? Do you think that like when he foresaw this last trilogy, he saw it as like an echo of the original trilogy, but Palpatine was the father figure?
Not at all. Not at all.
You think this was...
I think it was going to be Snoke until Rian Johnson killed him off. And he's like, well, damn it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. That's interesting.
He set all this in motion. I'm convinced he had a plan for Snoke that probably would have ended up here anyway. But Rian Johnson changed and shivved with so many of those ideas that he's like, well, all right, then I guess we'll just make it this. And it's, you can almost see Snoke having been kind of that same, Kylo Ren gets there and Snoke's just, there again. And it's like, what? Oh yeah. Because they've already established that cloning is a technology in the Star Wars universe. So that's not, they don't have to waste time on that. But then just this idea, it would just be kind of cool that like this inexplicable guy has just sort of infiltrated the Sith and is just controlling everything. That would have been way more cool. There was too much hubris to, things like Palpatine and then Lando didn't really serve the story so much as they're just like, this is cool, right? You want to see all you fans want to see this old stuff. Here you go.
Lando, it definitely felt like was fan service. I wish he'd had more to do or something. Was more integral to the part. But it was, to me, it was like the way he appeared. I was like, that's Lando. As soon as they, showed the disguise that he wears in Jabba's hut, I was like, there he is. And I also did not know that Billy D. Williams would be in it, nor Harrison Ford.
I love, my favorite scene in the entire thing was when Han Solo appears as not a Force ghost. I think it was an actual memory. Appears to Kylo like that. That was beautiful. And then they repeated the same lines. Like, I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And this time it's the opposite choice. That was wonderful.
That was enough redemption for me for Kylo, like that. And so I'm glad we circle back to that, because that's having Rey, heal him and him understand, like him in that moment sort of understand the difference between the dark and light side, I thought was like that was enough for me. If he had somehow like joined the army and become the new Poe and like, like she's bringing him back to the Resistance like base. No, trust me, he's a good guy now. Like that, I would not have bought for 1 second.
No.
So to have him play the role that he did, I thought was perfect. Really hated the kiss at the end that was kind of looked too romantic. And I didn't understand why she wanted to call him Ben. It's like, well, you never knew him as Ben. What does that even mean to you?
I think in that regard that she just wanted him to
maybe
return to who he really was. Like, she saw good in him, just like Luke saw good in Vader. It's like, you're my father. Like, Luke was playing the mind games with Vader, throughout all of Return of the Jedi, like really like trying to turn him. And I think Rey, much the same way, it was like, hey man, like Rey saw this broken little boy who grew up to be this, and she's like, if I can just help you get to that again, you might find some sort of happiness in your life.
Yeah, it just never seemed like she was the one convincing. Where like in Luke's, it definitely felt like Luke was making the argument to Vader, and in this, it was just her resisting. Always saying like, "I'll never join you," or "We'll see." I hated that line, but that's okay. We'll see about that.
Time will tell, I guess.
But yeah, that was enough redemption to me. For me. I'm fascinated by it. I don't think Palpatine was the way to go. But if I wanted to nitpick like the universe, I didn't need to see him for fan service. I never liked Palpatine. I always wanted that character to end. Was interested in his rise through the prequels, but I felt like they could have told the story of his rise in about 30 minutes, and that could have been it.
Although Ian McDiarmid, man, like talk about
right.
Talk about that guy. He played Palpatine when he was like 35 for the first time in the 80s, like maybe 40 years old, something like that. He wasn't old, and so to see this,
he had to regrow his fingers for this role.
That was real. That was real footage. No, but then to see him like then get to play the character in real time, like at the actual age he was supposed to be in the prequels, and then come back again, and just, I mean, how awesome for him. And just at the very least, it was cool just to see that actor get to just reprise it one more time, because of all the moments in Star Wars, one of my absolute favorite across all the movies was when he and Anakin are sitting in the theater and he's telling him the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. And like Ian McDermott's just like, he's just nuancing every single word. And you're just like, God, I would love to see more with this guy. It felt so like we had
that whole character could have been CGI'd for this movie.
It could have been. I mean, I'm glad it wasn't.
Yeah.
That was my other problem. Like, there was so much uncanny valley and just CGI in this whole thing. I'm like, dude, it's why JJ took such great pains in Force Awakens to make as much practical as he possibly could, and it showed. And in this, it's just like, nah, we don't have any time. Like, CGI at all, and it's just like, all right, I guess. The other thing with Palpatine though is that I just don't like the idea that Rey was his granddaughter. Who was the grandmother? Right. Like, was this like Adrian Veidt, where he just had, he shoots his load into jars and just kind of impregnated random women throughout the universe to like pass on his DNA? Because his son, Rey's father, would have come from somebody. It's just odd that that's even a thing. It's like, I wish if they were going to go down that road, then we kind of deserve a more sophisticated explanation instead of just like a hand wavy, like, it was your mom and dad, and who cares how that happened, and doesn't matter. It's like, was his son a clone of him? Like, there's just so many questions. It's like, I actually preferred Rian Johnson's solution to that, which was, your parents are nobody and you're nobody, and like, you're nobody special. Like, that gave Rey her own agency, and then JJ just reversed that too. It's like, no, she was somebody from the beginning, damn it.
That's what I think is the interesting tension here, is that in my mind, like and I don't hate on Rise of Skywalker, but I thought I liked Rian Johnson's direction better for all the characters. Like, I liked him expanding the universe and saying, like, sure, there's going to be some of that rhyming element that Lucas loves so much, but that's not all there's going to be, like, people are going to have like more backstories and things like that. And then for JJ to go, no, it was just supposed to rhyme from the start. So that's why I'm curious if he, I wonder if like Rey was originally some sort of relation to Snoke or something. We all speculated after Force Awakens, like, is she a Skywalker? Is she, a Kenobi? What's the story with her?
I would have much rather her been, if they were gonna do this fan servicey thing, I would have much rather her been a Kenobi. It just would have been, it would have made more sense. Obi-Wan on Tatooine might have there might have been some side story that we would have seen in maybe the Disney, because Disney Plus is doing a Ben Kenobi series. There would have been some, like, he met some woman and fell in love, for a brief moment, and Ben's her, Obi-Wan's her grandfather. That would have been cool, because then it would have made perfect. It just would have aligned better. It's like, okay, I can see how that happened. It's cool that that the legacy of the Kenobis goes on, and then it just would have made more sense. And then it would have made sense too why the Emperor, even if you want to throw in Snoke or the Emperor, like, why they would want her, because she has this sort of lineage. Anyway, and it would have satisfied, when Kylo Ren tells her that, we form a dyad in the Force. That's why we have these extra special powers, because we're sort of these offspring of this legacy that a lot of it reminded me of Dune. It was very strange. It was almost like he almost said, like, he didn't say it, but I was almost expecting him to say Quetzalcoatl Haderach, like, when he's talking about, like, you and I are like this sort of the natural evolution of this bloodline down to this point, and then bringing in things like spice running, and I'm just like, can we just see Dune? Let's just watch that. But Kylo Ren said that it would have still worked, and it would have worked even better if the grandson of Darth Vader and the grandson of Ben Kenobi, the granddaughter of Ben Kenobi, like, formed this dyad. Like, that would have been cooler. If they wanted to go down that road and not make it original, then at least make it make sense. And
God, it's just all interesting to look at the, one of Boris's other comments was that he just hated The Force Awakens. He's a huge prequels fan. Boris really, that's what I want to get out in the universe, is that Boris loves the prequels.
Wow. Somebody's got
it. But anyway, he just hated The Force Awakens. He thought J.J. Abrams, his quote was, J.J. Abrams was finally able to make the Star Wars movie he always wanted to make. It just turned out it was one he'd seen 30 years ago. So the tension between these two storytellers that we've gotten, like Rian Johnson and JJ, that's really of like utmost interest to me. Boy, wow! I didn't expect this coming into this conversation with you. I didn't think I would be taking sides on Rian Johnson, J. Abrams. Not that you're taking sides either. I mean,
if I had it my way, I would have rather seen all three movies written and directed by Rian Johnson, because he was at least
right
poking at something new and interesting. But we can't have this, like, in the original three, the George Lucas three, George Lucas wrote the script for all three. It was supposed to be one, and he split it into three. He directed the first one, obviously, and then the second and third one he produced and wrote, but he didn't direct. But it was still his story. That's why they all kind of fit together, with maybe a slightly different stylistic point of view as a different director came in. That would have been ideal for this. Like, you can have as many different, eyes looking at the camera as you want, but it just baffles the mind that there wasn't a cohesive, like, hey, here's the outline, here's the scripts, Kathleen Kennedy's running it like Kevin Feige would, and it's all going to fit together. None of that happened. It was like one movie. Okay, Ryan, do whatever you want to do. The show is yours. Here you go. And he's like, okay. And then he leaves. And they're like, JJ's like, oh, I mean, think about all the things that Ryan changed and then that JJ changed. I mean, we barely saw Rose Tico in this entire movie, which is interesting because I thought the way her character worked in this, I actually liked her character here better than Last Jedi. I was like, oh man, she's competent, she's got more agency, she's much more like her sister who died. She was Dory in Last Jedi. Come on, she just sort of flailed around helplessly.
I emphatically disagree. I felt like what JJ did in this one was turn Rose into the hard power female that he wanted to see, and he did not accept the soft power, like to me, like, because Rose is the one that puts together how they're being tracked through light space in Last Jedi.
That's true. Yeah.
She is a doer. She's the one that mechanically, she's an engineer, and she's like, hey, I figured out how they're doing this. She is essential to that. And in this one, it's like she's just given a gun and told to run alongside a spacecraft. Like,
okay,
question mark, in space, in an atmosphere. I don't know. She's not on a horse.
Fair enough. But then, her character was, she wasn't even needed. You could have saw this movie without even seeing her, and the story would have worked exactly the same.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's like JJ didn't know what to do with her.
Exactly.
And he was like, I can't have her teach another, lesson about love, so let's just put a blaster in her hand and never run around.
He could have given her all the scenes he gave to freaking Dominic Monaghan, which we saw like in every other shot was theirs.
So what was
that could have just been Rose. I don't know, but that could have been just that character could have just all that could have been Rose's stuff. That would have been cool. So it's like, okay, he didn't know what to do with her, but she still has agency in the movie. She's at least recognized as an important part and not some weird background character that we're never going to see again. It's like she wasn't even there at the end. It was just like, right. She didn't kind of run up and hug. It's just like, no, forget her. She wasn't really part of this the whole time. And by the way, here's two new characters that you're never going to see again either.
We got to talk about Dominic Monaghan. What the hell was he doing in this movie?
I don't know.
Are they like JJ and he are just great buds? Like from the Lost days?
Yeah. I mean, because there was,
where was Jack? Where was that guy with the...
There were a couple Lost cameos in The Force Awakens too. I mean, like,
oh really?
Yeah. That's JJ's notorious for putting Greg Grunberg is in every JJ Abrams thing ever. He's like to JJ Abrams as Sam Raimi's brother is to all Sam Raimi movies. I forget his name. He pops up all the time.
I was thinking of the Howard brother.
Oh, that too. Oh yeah. That's even better. No, you're right. No, but Greg Grunberg is that for, if you don't know who that is, he was on Heroes, but Google him, you'll know him as the second you see him. He's the kind of heavier bearded guy.
But yeah, Dominic just shows up and he's so recognizable.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a terrible idea. Yeah. And if it had been a walk-on kind of cameo, I would have groaned, but fine. But to have him constantly reappear, you're totally right. They should have just given that to Rose.
It's weird. It's very strange, and it's like that was odd and strange. I'm trying to think of all the different things. We talked during Watchmen about creator hubris and how Harry Potter went off the rails because J.K. Rowling just, there was nobody there to tell her no necessarily. The prequels, love them or hate them, were not as good as the first three movies because George Lucas didn't have somebody there telling him no. And I feel like J.J. same thing. It's like I didn't see any restraint. that was probably if I was a 10-year-old kid, I would have probably adored this movie to no end because it does because it moves so frantically. It does warrant repeat viewings. I'm going to see stuff I didn't see at all the first time because my eyes couldn't catch up. So that's kind of cool.
It's also not like a complex narrative like Watchmen. No. It's not, it's not meant to be like that kind of thing.
But there's so much, like even Poe's character almost, it's like JJ also wanted to direct Indiana Jones. So he just made Poe Indiana Jones for the sake of it. And it's like, man, which I was like, I would much rather just see Indiana Jones with Oscar Isaac and let's just do that and not try to shoehorn it into this. Cause it was like a competing movie that I wanted to see equally as much. And I'm like, Poe was never like this in the other two. I don't know why he's like running around.
You're reminding me of the things that like drove me crazy in that first like frantic thing with this like weird reveal that Poe was like not always on the side of the law or something.
Yeah,
was like, wait, what? And there's a moment where Ray says, "Yeah, I'm going alone" or whatever, and then Finn, I think, is the one that says, "Oh, then we'll go alone together." And I in my head heard Ray's voice saying, "You're right, new Lando." New Han Solo and new Leia are going to grab the new Lando and head out with Chewbacca. Because it was just like, at that moment, it was so like, oh boy, guys. Like, I wish you'd had I think their heart was in the right place. Like, narratively, it made sense. It was just the way that dialogue was delivered that made me think. There was like a shot of the three of them with Chewbacca, and it was like, yep, this is like Han, Leia, Chewie. And I'll tell you another missed opportunity, by the way. Gosh, how did this scene get put to? Oh, when Rey is in the destroyer and facing Kylo, and she looks off the edge of it. So once again, like, I don't know how you could just sort of look out into space, or if that was space or whatever. But then the Millennium Falcon shows up and turns around and like turns on its engine and like knocks everybody over. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This scene?
Yeah.
I so wish that we hadn't seen the Millennium Falcon right there and that she had just dropped off into space.
Yeah.
And then we had her like have a Luke, like have a rhyming scene from Luke hanging onto the antenna.
Yeah.
Like at Bespin or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was waiting for. I was like, that's like going to make it for me.
I kind of thought that's where that was headed. I was like, surprised when it did not. Yeah.
And maybe that's why. Maybe that's why, maybe JJ saw that about to happen, was like, you know what? I'm not going to just totally reshoot everything from the original trilogy.
I'm going to be even more clever. I'm just going to subvert it. I'm like,
yeah.
Here's a question. Okay, I'm kind of thinking through all this while it's in my mind. Were you at all surprised with the final truthful reveal of who Rey's parents were? Did that work for you? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I can't say I like saw it coming. Like, once I knew Palpatine was in it, but I was not exactly surprised. It did not impact me in perhaps the way it was supposed to, because I did feel like, wow, you're just taking, the same trope of like, she's got to have an evil father or something.
Who do you think the grandmother is? Let me bring that back up, because that's the one thing. There's a lot of logic failure in this, and I can go through it if you want. But the biggest one of all is like, who the hell is the grandmother? Do you think it is a Adrian Veidt kind of situation where it's like, I'm just gonna spread my seed Genghis Khan style across the universe and see what happens?
It's the problem with like the all superhero movies when they fight some sort of godlike power. Like, I just sort of accepted like that there's this monster that we can't explain, and somehow he had a child.
I mean, it is. There's
that
precedent.
Child had a child.
I just realized there's precedent for it. He did manifest Anakin, and Anakin's mom was a virginal birth. Yeah. Basically, and so it's kind of. That's what the prequels. None of the prequels heavily allude. They don't say it explicitly, but they heavily allude to it. That like Palpatine sort of used the Force to generate Anakin, and maybe that's the same thing that happened to his quote unquote son. I I don't know, just there were just so much. That was my biggest kind of logic failure, and the other one was just how he's got what? Let's just assume there's 100 superstar destroyers that kind of burst out of the planet at the beginning. Each one of those, if you want to get really nitpicky, each one of those requires like what? A couple thousand, people to pilot it and manage it. So where all of a sudden did they get 700,000 to 1 million new troops? I mean,
no one knew about.
And how did they all get there? And then where did they all come from? And
what about the Colosseum full of just Sith worshippers? Like who?
Well, and who are they? Yeah.
And where did they go?
Were they just ghosts that weird? It seemed my mind just went, oh, they're probably just Sith ghosts who just sort of assembled. I guess Did you get the feeling that they were working really hard not to use the word clone? Yes, I just wish they had. I'm like, there's a whole movie called The Clone Wars, or at least there's a show called The Clone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the second one, it dealt with it. So it's like, it's not like they have to, everybody knows what that is. I just wish they had, and they showed like the Snoke clones in the vats. It's like, oh, we could just make more of him if we wanted. So I'm like, what? One thing I did, it's so weird because there were so many competing ideas for attention to this thing that there was a couple I really like. I want to be positive too. Like Kerry Russell's character, wish I could have seen a whole movie. I want a whole movie with just her and Poe. Just show me that movie. Like that would have been cool. Because that Zori Bliss and the fact that they kind of played a Captain Phasma thing with her. They never showed her face, her eyes for a brief moment, but she stayed under that helmet the entire time. That was kind of cool, which is great because everybody thought that was going to be Rey's mom. I should be playing Rey's mom in a flashback or something.
Oh, right.
Glad that's not the case. I like this better.
Yeah. I like that character. I wouldn't put Poe with her in another movie. I'd like to just see her sort of, resistance or criminal shadiness, like with somebody else. That'd be great. Although she was the only age-appropriate friend for Poe. There's a scene at the end where they're hugging each other, and I'm like, yeah, you're 20 years older than your best friends. It was weird. That's fine.
The other thing I felt too was that I kind of wish had one person been manning the ship the entire way through. I feel like we would have had more between Rey, Poe, and Finn in the last movie, because like I really liked seeing them together a lot, but I'm like, that wasn't really earned. Like, Rey and Finn were together all of Force Awakens. And by the way, of all the characters to actually develop and create, have an arc for themselves, I would think Finn and Rey, definitely you can track them from a starting place and an ending place, and there's growth and development in a very logical way. Poe, not really. I mean, I love Oscar Isaac, so I'm not going to bad about it.
But see, I thought it was great. Like. And especially in retrospect and upon rewatching Last Jedi, I loved where his character was there, because it was like, no. The young friendship story is really between Finn and Rey.
Yes.
Because they are the same age and they both have these backgrounds they don't understand, and they're finding their place in the Resistance. Poe's been in it. Like he's a veteran, and so for him to screw up so badly on that bombing run and disobey an order from his general, that was like a big deal. It would have, and by the way, it would have been so much more helpful to know his past in that movie when it made sense. It's like, ooh, we shouldn't trust him because he is a sinister kind of character. Like that was completely invented for this movie, and I'm like, dude, you can't retcon that now. It's too late. Like it really felt like JJ going, no, this is the movie I wanted. This is the movie we should have had. I also didn't. What was it? Where was it? Oh, I didn't really appreciate them taking. They spent an entire movie introducing Rose. Say what you will, love her or hate her. She was there, like she was a main character introduced last time. She was sidelined this time, and then we got obviously Kerry Russell was fine. I mean, I appreciated that, but that other new character, I cannot remember the actress's name. Who was also a former stormtrooper child who Finn met. I was like, well, why do we need this? Like it seemed like so much stuff without any time to really delve into it. And I like that juxtaposition of hey, like we're both children who were taken, which by the way, I was glad she was in it for one reason alone. We heard a lot more so than any other movie. We heard more female stormtroopers, I think, than we've ever heard before. And so I was like, are they going to, and then they showed like, I was one too. I'm like, okay, so it is now canon that in this, a lot of the stormtroopers are women too. Great. Naomi Ackie.
Thank you. Yeah. It just felt it's just weird that she just popped up, and then again, we're never going to see her again either. I don't know. There's a lot, and they gave them a lot of like scenes together. Like this is, she's going to be important, and maybe she and Finn are going to have a relationship. And no, not really. It's just,
the General Hux turn that lasted all of 2 minutes.
That kind of made sense though, because it was established last movie that it's been established the whole time he does not care for Kylo Ren, and especially after the last movie he's like, oh, I hate Kylo Ren. So to see him turn, not so much of a surprise, but then to see him quickly dispatched after being such a mainstay in these movies. And I love Domhnall Gleeson too. I would have loved to have seen more interplay between him and Richard E. Grant if there was time. Richard E. Grant seemed like he was sort of jockeying for that position that Hux had. Hux and Pride, that would be a great buddy cop movie. General Pride and General Hux. But I don't know. I did like the reveal where, especially where Poe was like, you, I'm the spy, idiot. Like, oh yeah. That was kind of fun.
I did to make fun of this universe that I love so much. I appreciate that through 11 movies, the hierarchy of ranks in what seem to be disciplined armies is nonsense from start to finish. Yep. I remember in the prequels thinking, well, even in the original trilogy where it's like you've got an emperor and all these people in like uniform, and then there's just Darth Vader, but he somehow commands people. Like, I don't, he seems like sort of your rogue element. Like
Darth
this is
Vader
just your hired assassin, but somehow he's the leader of the TIE fighter army. So what?
Darth Vader is like the chief imagination officer in a bullshit startup. It's like he doesn't really have a specific traditional job, but he's here and we just let him kind of do whatever he wants, and he only has to answer to the founder, and that's kind of it. But he's sort of they're rubbing everybody the wrong way and just whatever.
And then you get the prequels where for some reason they elect a queen ? Like, I've never understood that. Like, why did you even have to call her queen? Why didn't you just call her prime minister or something? And then there's all this like senatorial nonsense where some people, I don't know. I never really understood that all those people were democratically elected or whatever. And then there's the newest trilogy where there's a supreme leader, another like rogue, just Darth element in Kylo Ren, then a general. Yeah. And I just, and there's admirals in the rebellion and the resistance.
There's Moffs, the governors. And all
right.
that.
Yeah. I didn't even know that was a title until someone told me recently. There's a moment where the Richard E. Grant character, I think, says something like impossible. They don't have a Navy. And and granted, it is a great like tear jerk moment where they call in Red 5 when Rey appears in Luke's old X-Wing. But in looking that up to make sure I was correct that it was Red 5, I learned that was actually the position that Luke was within that formation. Oh, okay. So once you're in a different formation, that wasn't his call sign. Your number would have just changed. Like you might have just been gold 3 and the next time you went out, or like he was probably in the red squadron and would just always be a red position. But he got that position from some other Red 5 that in canon was like killed. So Luke just sort of moved up into the Red 5 position. So anyway, it's like they just have titles that don't make any sense. And I think that's pretty amusing now with the whole thing concluded.
I didn't realize at the ending of the movie, like the great heroic moment was going to be a complete ripoff of the ending of Pirate Radio, when spoilers, the ship is sinking and like all of the listeners get on their own boats, and they're like, it's just this epic shot of like all these boats racing out into the North Atlantic to save the Pirate Radio people, and it's just here they all are. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah, it is unfortunately that's like a Star Wars trope, right? That like when help arrives, it arrives like in mass. And not just Star Wars, but like just a big blockbuster movie thing. And I was wishing that they had done, because when they called that, like, we'll just call in all our friends, you're not alone. The Empire's just trying to make you think you're alone, that line from Poe. I was hoping for that moment from, oh my gosh, the name just totally, Dunkirk. Where the story of like the citizen navy that went to help, I was like, oh, you've got an opportunity. Like if you could just work in like 15 minutes telling the story of the Citizen Navy and like flashback to those planets that got killed by the Starkiller base, and like, some people escaped and they've been out here in the vastness of space, just waiting for the call or something. I would have thought that was great.
One moment that I wish it was one of my more favorite moments, but I wish they had just gone all the way if they were going to do it, was when Rey, Palpatine sucks the life force out of her and Kylo Ren. He kind of restores himself. And then she is hearing the voices of all the fallen Jedi, which was kind of a cool thing because you got to hear Hayden Christensen, you got to hear Liam Neeson. And I don't know how much of that was recorded new versus just reappropriated, stock audio from previous movies. Didn't pay much attention. And I thought that was a very powerful moment, especially when she's, she has both lightsabers and she crosses them and she's basically recreating that scene where Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson's character, first confronts Palpatine, and like he's the reason his face gets like horribly scarred, and he's basically using his purple lightsaber to push back the Force lightning. Same idea, only she's got two and she's stronger. I'm like, if you guys are gonna do this, why can't we just have the Force ghosts of like everybody behind her? Like,
that would have been really cool. I would have liked that.
Oh my God. They could have put Ahsoka in there. They could have put like Liam Neeson could have come back for like 5 minutes of costuming to like stand. It just would have been cool to see as their voices are heard, like they all sort of appear and then like she gets up and like they're all sort of with her and they, charge with her. And it's just like this, that you could feel literally the history of all of Star Wars right there. And then just would have made it all the more powerful, I think. And I would have forgiven probably a lot more if they had really gone. Just think about how epic that would have been, just seeing everything. And then it would have shown too, Palpatine says all of the Sith is in me, and she could be like, all the Jedi are in me. You don't see the Sith in him because they're basically just there's nothing there. It's pure power. With the Jedi, it's all of these spirits and all these people that have come before. Like, just that would have been a cool contrast visually to have seen. But
interesting. No, that's a great note. Where do we end up on this? Like you said, you will watch it again.
I will definitely watch it again.
We should, not that we'll dedicate a whole episode to it again, but I do think it would be interesting because I'm going to for sure rewatch it in the next couple of days, like in the theater with my dad. And so I'll be interested to regroup with you, like even if it's just the intro to one of our other episodes, and see like, okay, upon rewatching, what'd you think?
One final question. Well, one final question, because we kind of glossed over it before. Do you like the actual character ending for Kylo Ren?
Yeah, I do. I think that that was enough. Like I said, that was enough redemption for me.
Are you happy or annoyed that he died?
Extremely happy.
Really? Because I was kind of hoping. I like where it ended up, but I kind of thought he would have to. He wouldn't die necessarily, but he would have to go off and spend the rest of his life trying to find redemption and never, basically just be this sort of hermit character that just goes and tries to live a life. Because it's a little too clean when somebody who's done something so terrible is just sort of allowed to die on a heroic note. I'm like, he should have to live with that a little longer. Like, that's more interesting.
I agree. And I think maybe that's why I didn't like the framing of that kiss. Like if it had been a real farewell kiss or like, something sadder, but it was shot the way and the looks on their faces was just too much like romantic. And it was like, no, you don't
expect him to come off the Falcon with her at the end, like, arm in arm, like, hey, we made it.
I would have been furious.
All is forgiven.
I'm upsetting the table. Where's my mac and cheese?
Do you like where she ended up?
Yeah, I like it. I really liked her growth as a Jedi, and I guess there's been some bitching about like how all of a sudden she's super powerful. But what I saw in her in the beginning, like fast cutscenes, was she is fucking diligent about her training.
Yeah.
To an extent that Luke was not. Yeah. Like all Luke wanted to do on Dagobah was leave. And here she is letting Poe run missions because she has to train, and Poe's the one that's like, you should have been there with us. And she's going, no, I got to train. And she's got the original text of the Jedi. Like, she understands her importance and lineage. And, that was, I don't know.
Who's complaining who's saying that she was too powerful?
I think that's like one of the gripes from the,
that's established in The Force Awakens. Like she is unusually powerful. And they're all, I mean, even Kylo Ren's like, what is the deal with her? Like she's got, and he's fascinated by her because she's way more powerful than he would have ever imagined. And he's been training for a long time and she's a noob. And he's just like, what are you doing? You know, so she's had that. I like your point though, because she is very, very studious. And I like I was a little annoyed that they weren't going to show it, and they finally showed she had completed her own lightsaber, and it's a yellow one, and it looked cool. I was just like, I did like that. That was cool. That's too. Great. I didn't know if we were going to get like a when we see the brief glimpse of her evil future with sort of that crazy cool flip knife version of the Darth Maul lightsaber. Like I'm like, maybe it's that because she's got that.
I thought that too.
Staff that she carries around. Why not just make it a Darth Maul kind of thing? But maybe she will. Yeah.
No, that was all cool. Maybe this is a good place to end, or set us down for landing. The Rise of Skywalker. In that moment when she identifies herself as Skywalker on Tatooine, what hit me at that moment was like how important this name is and how it's just an adopted name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in my head, I guess I'd, even knowing better, like knowing it's Leia Organa, right? I always think of it like as Luke and Leia Skywalker. But that's not true because the aunt and uncle weren't actually his aunt and uncle, right?
No, that's Anakin Skywalker is his father, so that was carried on. Like Beru and Owen, they're
okay, right, yeah, right. You're right.
He was because he knew he was an adopted. He knew like his last name was not their own. Now the question is, you're right. Anakin's name was Skywalker,
and
that was his mom's name, if I'm not mistaken.
So now I have
It goes back that far. I
have problems with Rey calling herself Skywalker.
Yeah, me too. And I'm just like, I just wish she would have ended like, my name is just Rey. It's just like, that could have been, because she mentioned that would have been a callback to before when she's talking. I forget who she's talking like a little kid or something. And she's like, what's your last name? Like, it's just Rey. She's on that market planet. And she's interacting like, what's your last name? Like, it's just Rey. I don't know. And so it would have been cool at the end for her just to be like, no, it's just Rey. Like I am who I am. I am not connected to this lineage anymore. I mean, I get why they went the way they did. It was kind of a weak justification of the title. It's like, you think, I thought with the Rise of Skywalker, I thought they were going to purposely play off the end of The Last Jedi, which you saw across the universe. Anybody could be in. There's all these Force sensitive people, even like Finn. There's a lot of glimpses of him. And I think when they were sinking into that quicksand and he's like, Rey, I have something to tell you. It's not, oh, I love you. It's, I'm Force sensitive too. Like I think that's what he was going to get at. And so they really built this up that all these people, and it just would have been cool to see the Jedi are dead, but the Skywalkers, anybody who's a Force sensitive is basically like a DIY Jedi. That's more important. I thought that's kind of where we were heading. And then they just ignored all that. So it just felt a little like, I guess at the very end when he's like, oh, and by the way, the title makes sense because Rey, tell him I'm a Skywalker. That's right. Just like, and credits.
Yeah. Okay. And by Force sensitive, we should clarify. You mean they have more midichlorians in their blood?
Oh, God. I hate not. I'm sorry, Boris. That was the one problem. That was the one of all the problems with the prequels. The fact that the Force is decided by genetic, basically like everybody's drinking kombucha to boost their midichlorians and get the Force. Like that just, I don't, whatever. I did like one more thing. I did like that they referenced the Holdo maneuver.
Really? Yeah, I did not like that.
It was Dominic Monaghan, if I'm not mistaken, who said, he's like, why don't we just use the Holdo maneuver? Either he said it or he was the one that responded. That only works in the most extreme of circumstances, and it only works once. So it's kind of cool that they at least they name checked that a little bit, but I
did not like that. I thought that was way too meta, like way too fan servicey.
Really?
Yeah, and probably because of the fact that it's centered on like Dominic Monaghan's face, and I was like,
there was another movie that we never saw that he was like a crucial character in, and it led into this, and it's like, wait, whoa, because there was a couple other lost alumni in The Force Awakens that were not in this, and there was no explanation as to where they went. So maybe just like, did they just die? I guess. One more final question: who do you think owns the Millennium Falcon now?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, it should always be Chewbacca's, is my feeling.
Fair enough.
But I guess you're getting at the Lando thing, right? Well,
Lando's back, and Rey kind of treated it like it was her ship too. So I'm curious, but you're right. If it would be anybody's, it would be Chewie's. Because he lost everything. He lost everybody except for Lando, and he wasn't really that good of friends with Lando.
What did we make of Lando's intentions in talking to Naomi Ackie's character at the end there?
Oh! Well,
it seemed a little too flirtatious.
No, not that at all. I was like, are you
a father thing?
Yeah. I was like, are you her dad? Is that what I mean, don't just throw that in at the end. Like, I mean, unless you're like, stay tuned to the graphic novel coming from, it just seemed odd to kind of just toss that in. Like, maybe there will be a Disney Plus show one day about this. We'll just put this right here.
Maybe. I thought it was pretty clearly established in Solo that Lando was a robosexual.
Yeah. I mean, they could have paid that off too when he was flying the Millennium Falcon. I mean, there's poor Billy D. He looked so happy to be there and had nothing.
Yeah, he really did.
He's like, hey, you all still care. I don't have anything to say, so I'm just going to sit here in the background, but you don't have to talk to me anymore.
I do have perfect information on my watch about this spaceship that's been in the desert untouched for decades.
Yeah, that was a weird. Oh man, like I'm saying, you can't think too hard about this. I would say anybody who hasn't seen it, who's on the fence, just go in expectation free and just enjoy the ride for what it is. And I think that's the best, and that's what I did. And it's just
so maybe we end there. Like, do you feel like this was? And did he bring it in for a landing?
No, I mean,
to use our Watchmen. Oh no. Okay.
They started off flying to France. Ryan Johnson diverted the plane to Canada for some reason, and then JJ's like, you know what? Forget France. We're going to Hong Kong, and just like turned the plane around entirely. It's like, okay. So they landed. It wasn't where they were headed, but they landed somewhere, I guess. In terms of it being a end, the feeling and the closure of an ending, we got that. It's just not the destination we set off for.
Okay. I thought that was a pretty huge task to present to any director.
Yeah.
To land this ship. And so I thought JJ did an adequate job. Like, I liked the movie. I think I will like it more upon revisiting it. Not my favorite Star Wars movie, but I appreciate that there are like so many moving parts and there's so many stories to wrap up, and also like just, nods to give to people. Like even the I can't remember her name. Lupita Nyong'o's character. Giving the medal to Chewbacca. Like fan service, yes.
Yeah.
But like kind of a cool thing to put in there. Because it's almost a secretive thing. Like people don't, it's not like every viewer knows why that happened. So it is kind of cool.
I just realized, by the way, no one really died. Kylo Ren, but that doesn't count. Like, he didn't lose. I think everybody was thinking we were going to lose C-3PO, and he didn't even lose his memories. Like for a hot second, and then that guy rebooted. So like we didn't really lose anybody. In the main cast, I thought of Leia, obviously, but that was going to happen regardless. That was my final question. I sorry to keep tangenting, but I had one more question. Yeah. What was Leia doing? Like, was she? I mean, like it was weird that she tried to reach out to Ben, but then like was Ben overwhelmed by that? Just it was very fuzzy, and
it was fuzzy, and I don't know that we should spend too much time on it. But in Last Jedi, I think Snoke is the one that's like, I think he just straight up tells Kylo, like, I'm the one who's been connecting you and Rey. And I think what was happening in this one was Leia was trying to connect them.
Oh, interesting. because she doesn't fade away until after
they connect.
I think. Until Ben dies, because isn't she laying in state until then Ben dies, Kylo Ren dies, and then her body fades away too at the very end, like the blanket drops because Poe comes back in. Am I misunderstanding? Am I misremembering this?
Fade? No. But I don't know that that's the right sequence or timing. I don't know that's when Ben dies. I like your take. I like your take though. That she has to facilitate that connection, but that doesn't make any sense because Rey and Ben are already there together. This is when they're fighting on the ocean world. And then she reaches. They're like this will take. She won't survive this. I'm like, what is she gonna do? And then it's just like she unlocks something in him. I just wish they were a little more deliberate, or you heard her voice like whispered to him or something. I just don't know. I'm glad Carrie Fisher was honored in this. It just seemed. I almost wish that could. I don't know. They couldn't have done it any other way. I wonder what would have been had she not passed. Like, what was the real Leia role going to be? Did you enjoy that little flashback we get to Leia training to be a Jedi?
Yes, that was great. I thought that was more of like a Rogue One kind of thing, which is like, holy crap, like that's cool because you never got to see that before, and truthfully, you never got to see Luke really training as a Jedi like in the way that they do now, because at that time you didn't have all the CG that you could spin him around with and all this stuff, so you got to see kind of a more modern interpretation of Luke, and then to see the mask come off and the fact that Leia had her own lightsaber and she trained, like that was just a cool. I'm glad that was the kind of fan service I liked. Right. Don't bring back shit that's not relevant to the story, but do show me like another window into something that gives us more context. That's like, oh, that's cool. Now we have the technology to show you this. Now you got me thinking about that. I almost want to go back and just watch Rogue One just to remind myself of how this could be done.
I want to go back and watch all of them, so that's always a good feeling. Like not the prequels ever again. You know what? I will argue there are parts of Phantom Menace that are great, and there are parts of the third one, I forget the damn title of it. Revenge of the Sith.
There are parts in the Revenge of the Sith that are great. If you can somehow in your brain convince yourself that it's not Hayden Christensen, but some other actor who's better, it actually kind of works. Here's one more final note on this. I'm just thinking, as I'm saying this out loud, it occurred to me. Remember in Revenge of the Sith, the whole Anakin's whole thing is, I know Padme is going to die. I need to use the Force to save her. Palpatine says the only way to really do that is to join the dark side and become a Sith. We now know that's not true at all. He could have stayed a Jedi and could have force healed Padme if he wanted to. So it's like, and granted, that was probably not a thing when George Lucas wrote that, but they have now retconned the fact that you can force heal, and Baby Yoda does the same thing. So two different sources now have like given this force healing thing weight, and Anakin didn't have to. I mean, that's all the more tragic. He didn't have to turn. He could have stayed a Jedi and maybe found a way to do it. I don't know. It's interesting to consider that and all the kind of what if. I'm gonna make a bold claim. I think in the next 15 years they're gonna try to redo the prequels. I think we're gonna get a different. And I don't know if it's going to be a movie. It may be a graphic novel. It may be a TV show. It may be an animated series. But I think they're going to try to redo it in a way that sort of lines up better. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but
Bold.
There's
bold claim.
I don't. There's too much, and I know like for a whole generation, the prequels are Star Wars. So it's you can't undo that. Well, it's true. There's a lot of kids who are now adults who are like, those are my Star Wars movies. They're just gonna have to. Well, all right, I'm done.
If people want to hear more of our bold claims about Star Wars, where can they find us?
You can find us online. We're at panelism.inc, panelism.ink, and that is also our Instagram handle, panelism.ink. And this will be the last show for the year, and then we'll be back to getting in the books. I think we're going to announce our January book pick right after the new year, so stay tuned for that and many other things. If you're listening to this past that, obviously,
you're too late.
You're too late. I've officially lost all my vocabulary. So this is a great time to. I'm glad we could come to do this. This really does tie up many episodes of Star Wars listening. I think we'll create a playlist that kind of collects it all together.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and the Star Wars, the Panelism Star Wars playlist. Going back to the Todd and Taylor show, man, that goes far back. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I hope my comments, entertain those who were sort of on the fence about it, like I was, and everybody in between. So I think
and like I said, we'll probably revisit it later. So
I'm sure we will, and I'm sure we will. Well, until then, sir, have a great holiday, have a great New Year, and we will see. We'll talk to you all in 2020.
Wow, we'll do that.